of the Flourish Collective.
This meeting is being recorded.
And true Rhode Island story, unbeknownst to Carol, when she invited me to moderate this event, was that Melissa and I worked together at Zymedica. And so this is a special treat, really, to get together and talk. So a little bit housekeeping here. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Carol will be monitoring those, and we'll either bring them in throughout the conversation, and we also have time at the end too, so we can get them there as well. So without further ado, really we're here to talk with Melissa and Elizabeth. We're gonna hear about their experiences and vision in launching the Flourish Collective, which is geared toward making wellness accessible for all moms. And they launched their first product, the Flourish Fund Baby Registry, in 2020, a first of its kind platform where expecting parents can register for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum support. And we're gonna hear about how their company started, their first prize win. We can talk a little bit about in the Rhode Island Business Competition in 2021 and their upcoming strategic plans. So, little introduction about each of these fine ladies. Melissa Boley, she's the founder and CEO of the Flourish Collective. A biomedical engineer by trade, Melissa spent her career working on creating products to better women's health and wellness at top medical device companies. Now, as a mom of two, she is on a mission to improve maternity care in the US through building awareness and increasing access to local community resources for new and expecting moms. And we'll get a little bit more into her desire to start this from her personal journey, and is determined to find a solution to improve maternity care and shift the spend to more wellness and less stuff. Elizabeth Howard, Liz, she's has her PhD and is currently Chief Clinical Officer at the Flourish Collective and Director of Nurse Midwifery Division at Women and Infants Hospital here in Rhode Island. And Liz brings a personal emphasis on community inclusion and diversity in health education. She's been giving community outreach lectures and led research in this area since 1984. And her career has really given her extraordinary exposure to a range of patient and provider demographics at organizations around the country, including Yale, New Haven Hospital, the Meharry Medical School in Nashville. She's the author of 22 reviewed publications, received an American College of Nurse Midwives Foundation Leadership Award, and is a 10-time winner of the Dean's Award for Teaching Excellence at Brown University's Medical School. She's also a current Watson Caring Science Institute postdoctoral fellow and associate professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the Alpert Medical School, Brown University. So please welcome Melissa and Liz. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you, Michelle. We're honored to be here as well.
So why don't we start first a little bit about your background? I mean, a part of the Rhode Island Bio Women in Science series is to hear how you came into science and engineering and how you decided to pursue your path. So maybe each of you could speak to that a little bit.
Sounds good. So as you mentioned, my background's biomedical engineering. When I was in BME back in the day, I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey. There were very few women in engineering. I luckily grew up around engineers. My sister's an engineer, my husband's an engineer, my dad's an engineer. So it was kind of like something that we just talked about at the dinner table, and I grew up around it, and I loved math and science. So I was like, let's give it a shot, and love the biology side. For me, I thought about med school for a long time. I really, patient care is at the heart of like everything that I've wanted to do in my career. And I thought about medical school, and then ultimately decided like I thought I could have a lot of impact designing products, solutions for the medical world and for patients. And that brought me right into biomedical engineering. And I don't know, I've loved it. I feel like I'm still getting to do it, even though it's in a totally different space and more consumer and digital tech, which is new to me. But it's a really great career. And I think it gives you a lot of flexibility, as a problem solver to get into business problems, people problems. You kind of take that same engineering approach, at least I do, to solving problems across the board. And I think it sets you up to be an entrepreneur, whether you're meant to be one or not.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing how you've applied it in a lot of different ways and explored that. What about you, Liz? What was your path?
So I did not start out in science. I started out as an undergraduate studying sociology and wanting to be a journalist, but it was in medical sociology classes that really sort of drew me to things like the social determinants of health. And I took a sociology of childbirth class, and I read this book, Women in Power in the Birthplace, and I just knew I had to be a midwife. So my path after that was in developing health education programs for a hospital, and then attending midwifery school, getting my nursing degrees. And so I've been a midwife since 1991, and then went on to get my PhD in nursing science, and studied, sort of research methods. And, really nursing science is about the science of health and wellness and how people adjust to health and illness. So my main focus has been in quality improvement, reducing cesarean rates, promoting comfort in labor, non-pharmacologic approaches to that comfort in labor, and ultimately what helps families transition in a positive way to parenthood, what gives them confidence, and how you support that transition, because it's such a monumental life event. So, certainly meeting Melissa, I think our passions really met, and we formed a connection a few years ago.
That's great. I love too that as an example of someone that didn't necessarily always know they wanted to do science and how you came into it. I think that's great, and a great example of others that they don't always have to have had this innate burning desire to do science and engineering from an early age. You can come to it at any point in your life.
Yeah.
Since we'll be talking about it and touching on it throughout our conversation, could you explain to folks that perhaps don't know about midwifery, what a midwife is, what a doula is for folks?
Sure. So doulas, I'll start with the doula. Doulas are non-clinical providers that are experts in supporting families in prenatally, during birth, and then postpartum, in terms of non-pharmacologic labor support. One-to-one labor support has been shown to be one of the most effective ways to reduce a cesarean. Randomized trials have shown that actually your chances of having a C-section are cut in half if you have a doula. Your chances of successful breastfeeding are increased with having a doula. A midwife, generally midwives can be trained first as nurses in this country. I'm a certified nurse midwife. So I have a nursing degree and I have a master's in nursing as well as a PhD, but my specialty is in maternal, child, newborn nursing, midwifery. Midwives care for women throughout the lifespan, a focus on wellness, and work in collaboration. I like that your model is like collaborative science is the best. You get the best ideas. Here at Women and Infants, I work with the OBGYN residents, the medical students, and the physicians, and we work in an interprofessional team, which I feel like really gives a lot of perspectives on the patient, with the patient being at the center. So midwives have an advanced degree and have passed a certification exam.
You saying patient-centric really resonates with me as a medical device developer, and say with Melissa, just having the user in mind and how it's going to be used, and having that patient in mind and making it the best experience for them. So that's great. So let's talk a little bit about Flourish Collective and the Flourish Fund. If you could speak a little bit more about it, and how did you decide to start it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, it was kind of something that I didn't plan for or realize that I was going to get involved in. And I've been working in it for over 4 years now. So as a biomedical engineer, when I was pregnant, I had done all the research. I was spending every day on PubMed trying to understand how to get the best possible outcomes. And then I spent a lot of time researching what gadgets I needed, what fancy strollers I needed. I was just all about finding the best, the best support and the best products. And I ended up finding out through a friend of mine, actually at Zymedica as well. I'll give Beth a shout out. She came to me while I was pregnant and she was like, you know, all this research you're doing, there's a lot of research supporting the use of a doula. And I said, a do what? I don't even know what a doula is. And it was a weird word. And I asked her to like spell it for me. And then I ultimately looked it up and I was like, wow, they really do improve your chances of, you know, better outcomes. And that's reduced NICU time. That's, you know, lower C-section rates. That's improved outcomes in breastfeeding, both upon discharge and in the future. It seems like a no-brainer. Oh, I think somebody's not on mute. It seemed like a no-brainer that it's something that we should be doing. And at no point did my OB mention that as a resource. And so I ended up having a doula for both of my births, and it was a really incredible experience. And I really don't know how I could have done it without her. So that was my aha moment for like, oh my God, there's these amazing resources, amazing research and evidence out there that people just aren't aware of. So that was kind of my first mission, was like, how do we make people aware of these amazing resources? And the second piece for me was in postpartum care. Again, I'd spent so much of my career working in pelvic floor prolapse and breast reconstruction and hernia repair. And I suddenly realized like, these are symptoms and problems that happen later because we're not preventing them on the front end. And I found out during my postpartum, like I was sleep deprived. I had postpartum depression. I had pelvic floor challenges, and I wasn't expecting, I was bleeding, you know, the things that nobody tells you about postpartum. And I didn't really know where to turn. And I ended up having an amazing breastfeeding support group that was around the corner. And all these women were talking about these challenges they were facing and didn't have resources to turn to. So we started finding those resources in our community. So lactation consultants, sleep consultants, IBCLCs, postpartum, we used to go to Mommy and Me yoga. And these are all things that are actually evidence-based to improve your mood, to better those outcomes. And again, it just, people weren't aware of it. So that's really where we started. And it was actually an organization called Mom Unity about 4 years ago. I went through the SEG Accelerator here in Rhode Island. And as we talk to moms, we've now talked to over 2,500 moms. We're really data-driven. They basically told us that they would love to see these things on their registry. So that's where that pivot came from. And the second piece they told us is like, stop giving up stuff. We don't need more stuff. We need help. And they want to see things like this as part of their support. And at the time of building your registry, that's when you're making those key decisions. How do I want my, you know, pregnancy and postpartum to go? How am I going to spend my money? How am I building out my birth preferences and postpartum preferences? That's the moment those things are happening. So it's a really great time to, you know, check in with a mother and say, hey, did you know about these incredible resources? And let's help match you based on your family's needs to the resources and the stuff that you might need. So that's kind of how Flourish Fund was born.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing and being so honest about your experience and where it came from. I mean, as a mother of three, I can relate to a lot of what you said about so much time being spent preparing up to the birth. And then there really is so much more that comes after. So that's great. So how did the two of you meet then and decide to join up and go on this journey together?
Well, we were we were planning a community health fair at Women and Infants in I would say September of 2019. And I met with different people in the community to try to figure out like who to invite in. I met with some doulas, and one doula that owns Carrier Connections. She does a lot of baby wearing and baby wearing classes. She said, oh, you need to have Melissa Boley, Mom Unity. And so, so we had the health fair, and it was amazing to connect with so many community organizations. And we had a little a baby wearing fashion show that people really got involved in, with some providers and the doulas and the midwives. Melissa and everybody had a baby wrap, and either a real baby or a doll. And we had a nice little conga line, and it just was just an aha moment that baby wearing is actually an evidence-based way to to give family self-care, but also to keep the baby close. It's like it's data driven as something that facilitates family attachment. I don't know, Melissa, what's your perspective on how we met?
That's pretty much it. We hit it off, and then we were planning more and more of these educational series in person. And like when I built the business in March of 2020, we were launching an in-person services-based organization, and suddenly everything blew up in March of 2020, right? So that was really challenging for us to figure out how can we still reach moms. And what we found, especially as COVID came into the picture, that moms had even more questions and more anxiety, and they needed even more help than ever. And childbirth education classes were being canceled, and they weren't getting access to that information anymore. So we got our heads together and we talked about like on the Flourish Fund side, how do we enable a lot of those virtual services? So how do we bring providers on and make sure that they're able to provide some of these services virtually? And then on the other side, it was how do we educate families? And so during 2020, we educated over 1,500 families through Zoom, something very similar to what we're doing here. We say it's from our living room to their living room. And we brought on experts like Dr. Neil Shaw and Rebecca Decker from Evidence-Based Birth, and the doula from the community, and the mom next door. And we had real conversations about what was really going on now with the pandemic, but also things that moms were asking about. We were doing surveys to understand what topics they wanted to hear most about. And we just really came together around how do we continue to do this? And that's how I brought Liz on as the Chief Clinical Officer. It's amazing to have patient-centered and mom-centered and family-centered is what we're all about. So having Liz's experience is so valuable because she's in it every single day, and seeing the challenges and the successes, and it's really helpful. So she's been very, very instrumental in building out the educational program that we have now with Flourish Fund. And it's been amazing to reach so many families here locally, but we've had people join from California, Texas, Illinois, all over the country, because it really does enable that level of access.
Yeah, and one of the things that I knew just from a clinical perspective, really throughout the pandemic, is that anxiety for everybody is just so much higher than it ever used to be. And even working in a hospital with ever-changing guidelines, people needed to be aware. What are the current visitation guidelines? So we updated people every panel. Our panels are like from 2 to 3 hours long, and it's really amazing how engaged the entire family stays for the whole panel. Even now with Zoom fatigue, we've been surprised that people have really enjoyed this format. We actually had the president of Lamaze International for one, and she told this great story about seeing her first birth in the 60s with a midwife doing the delivery, and then deciding to teach Lamaze and go on with that, and that she taught it from her living room. So we kind of felt like this was almost full circle. You know, it was from our living room to other people's living rooms, teaching in this virtual format.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, another part of having you on the series is to talk and highlight your entrepreneurial journey to share with other entrepreneurs. So at the time you guys met, Melissa, were you looking for a partner, or was this more born out of finding and connecting with Liz and seeing the potential there?
It was, as most of the things in entrepreneurship, it's a roller coaster, and a lot of it just kind of, falls in place. So it came at the right time. Liz and I had that connection. And we were putting our brains together to kind of figure this out. She was volunteering her time. She still volunteers her time. She's just amazing. Really, that's how we ended up starting to work together. I also have a co-founder that I met through SEG. So Rhode Island has been a really incredible place to start a business. Really, really supportive, from winning the business award last year, which was amazing, to SEG. We did Mass Challenge this year, and there's just so many resources that are coming out of the woodwork just to help support us, which we really, really appreciate. And then obviously having the academic and clinical centers around here, I really think this could be a hub for health and wellness. So I think, again, I know I went off track a little bit, but we lucked out.
Excellent. Yeah. And another piece that really came out in that too is just recognizing when COVID hit, your pivot there and how you quickly adjusted to be able to still provide, seeing the need, seeing that increased anxiety and such. Can you speak to other pivots that have occurred since you started?
Yeah, so I think one of them that I was talking about was the Mom Unity platform. So we had essentially built essentially like a directory or marketplace of providers. It was an open network, anybody could join. We had about 200 people on there. That's what I went through with the SEG incubator. And I think that was great. We learned so much. I was able to do tons of market research around that platform. And that's where we learned about the registry really being that point in time where moms are making those key decisions on how to spend their money. And friends and family are interested in contributing to mom's health and wellness. And they love giving these meaningful gifts that are really going to drive, a healthy family, which is what everybody wants at the end. I think another interesting aspect, and I know we're probably going to touch on this a little bit later, is during all of this, the doula bill was passed. And as I mentioned, we're not just focused on doulas, but doulas are at the center of the Flourish Fund. It's the provider we have the most of on the platform today. And they also are amazing. They can connect you to a lot of the resources. So a lot of the resources that we have on there came from, doulas coming in and being like, oh my God, you have to work with this, yoga wellness center. So, the doulas are incredible, and the bill passed in July of last year, and it's going into effect this year so that every single woman in Rhode Island is eligible for doula services, $1,500 of doula services between Medicaid and private insurance. So every woman is now eligible for this benefit starting in July of this year, which was another big moment where all of a sudden third-party payers were reaching out to me and they're like, oh my God, there's going to be so much demand for this benefit. How are we going to connect people to the right providers? And we already have a system and an algorithm for a lot of that. So now we're starting to partner with third-party payers to understand how can we develop a program and actually help, say this is the right provider for your needs. They either speak your language, they have your same lived experience. How do we match those individuals and families to the right providers? And so we were doing that, and there's been a lot of interest there as well. So that's a whole nother direction that we're taking now.
And I think it's worth to highlight, because I was asking you when you first told me this, I mean, this is a state legislation, it's not a federal, and really Rhode Island is at the forefront of this, at helping moms and increasing maternal health with this bill.
Absolutely. So the doulas did a phenomenal job. I was actually at the State House in 2019 testifying for the doula bill. But the doula group here in Rhode Island has been working on this really hard for the last 3 years. And it's really incredible to see how they drove this forward. There's 21 states that have bills under consideration or have already passed bills, but it's really isolated either to just Medicaid or you need a prescription from your OB in order to have it. Rhode Island is the most inclusive and holistic in the bill. And it's really, really exciting. I think the rest of the country is going to catch up to that. There's a lot of things that need to be worked out because there's a lot of steps that need to be taken in order for this to be a seamless transition, but it's really exciting. And I really do think that maternal health is a focus for so many people right now. The government, there's a Momnibus bill that's currently going through as well at the federal level. So things are changing every month. California in November actually just passed their doula bill. So like every month this is changing and I'm getting new phone calls and stuff, which is a great place to be. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of what's to come, and Rhode Island's kind of taking the forefront here and setting those trends.
That's great. That's awesome. Obviously leading to some potential great strategic partnerships and collaborations. Can you share what's maybe some that are in the works or give us a sneak preview?
Well, we've been partnering with women and infants for quite some time, obviously, to do this education. We've had lots of clinicians from women and infants on these amazing panels, and Liz can speak to that. And Liz's network is how we've brought on these other amazing national speakers like Ginger Breedlove and the head of Lamaze and all of that. So I think that that's one partnership that will just continue to grow. We're also talking, as I mentioned, with third-party payers who are like, hey, can we contribute? Can you help us find the right providers for our members? But can we contribute dollars to a members flourish fund so that they can go out and find the right support for them? So we're engaging in those conversations. And then from an investment perspective, we're out fundraising right now. And we have some strategics, they're corporate venture arms that are interested in partnering and investing in the company. So a lot of really exciting support and potential for partnerships coming out. We'll see kind of what happens over the next couple of months, but we have a lot of exciting things coming.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit from you, Liz, your perspective on some of those partnerships and which pieces of it really excite you and that you like.
So I think from my perspective, having done a lot of quality improvement here and knowing that when we study healthcare interventions like bundles, we look at a set of evidence-based actions that create a better outcome. And that's really what I think of when I think of the Flourish Collective, is that it's not just doulas, it's not just education, it's not just midwives, it's the collection of services, experiences, and support that we believe not just promote maternal confidence, but self-efficacy, like in the belief that I can actually get this done. I can be a good parent. I know my resources. I know my community. I know how to reach out when I need something. One of the most powerful panels that we had, I think, was on emotional health. And I think that we have seen depression and anxiety go up. But knowing that you have the support and how to access that, to me, is the most important, because really, I've been a midwife for 30 years, and any one clinician can't do it themselves. It's like you really need that village around you. And that's what excites me about the Flourish Collective, is that we're sort of trying to provide a village for every person, no matter what place in life they're at.
That's great. That's great. You mentioned, Melissa, that you're looking for investments, and for those of us in the entrepreneurship funding community, we're well aware that the additional hurdles that women founders, women CEOs face when they're looking for funding, and especially in the women's health, women tech space. Can you speak to what you've seen from your personal experience? Does that align with what is in the headlines a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of positive that's happening right now. So I don't know if you saw, but in 2021, there was nearly $2 billion put towards women's health in companies like Maven, Tia. There's a lot going on right now in this space, and that's like breaking all the records. Now, it still only counts for like this much of, the funding that's out there. So there's still, women and women of color, especially, like they're very underserved populations. And so there's a lot of opportunity to grow in this space. So again, making huge strides, but still a very small portion in comparison to where all the investing's going. I would say in my fundraising journey, it's been really interesting because I'll go to talk about, the solution and why it matters. And typically when I talk to women investors, and this is a little bit more general, but which make up, again, a very small percentage of the VCs and angel investors out there, which we need more of. I mentioned the problem and the solution within the first minute. They're like, okay, what are you going to spend the money on? Like they understand it, they've lived it, they get the problem, they understand why this is a solution, because they're the ones who had to, during postpartum, try to find the right resources, and your head's all, exhausted and not in the right space to suddenly try to piece together the village that Liz was talking about. You want to be proactive and have them at your fingertips. So I would say the aha moment is very quick when there's females involved in the pitch discussions. When I'm talking to men, typically it just takes a little bit longer. They're like, well, what's the difference? What is a doula? And obviously I didn't know what a doula was 2 years ago either, or whatever, I guess 7 years ago. I was gonna say 2 years ago. 7 years ago, I didn't know what a doula was either. So it's just starting at a different point in time. And it's hard when you haven't lived those problems. It's hard to have that resonate with you. So I think that's the challenge. And it even comes up in what we're doing too. Representation across the board is something that just needs to happen in the VC community so that the investors are investing in this space. They're investing in women founders. But again, I think there's been such a push to do that we're seeing strides made in the right direction.
That's great. That's good. I'm glad to hear that you're seeing it too at a personal Flourish Fund level. So
yeah,
excellent. And you kind of touched on it, and diversity inclusion is important to me, like Carol was saying. So how do you, from a day-to-day perspective in your products and programming, how do you incorporate diversity inclusion at Flourish, the Flourish Fund and the Flourish Collective?
I'm going to quickly touch on 2 ways, and then I'm going to let Liz jump in a little bit about what we've researched and what our publications have been about. But I think the first one being, we're trying to shift that spending and that care from solely hospital-based, right? Like we want to work and integrate the community care with the hospital-based care. So there's so much that happens after you leave the hospital, right? You said you prepare for this birth, and then all of a sudden it's like a whole year long of support that you need that happens from the community. And the community is more representative of the community it's serving than what's happening at the hospital typically. So I do think by shifting a lot of that focus to how, when that mom transitions home, do we, care for her coming from the community that she lives and breathes in every single day. And I think that's going to shift a lot of that as well. And so that's how we structure our educational programs. We bring in teams from all over the country, but also from the community. And therefore, the mom that's sitting and watching, from our living room to their living room, they're seeing somebody that looks like them, that shared a lived experience with them. And they actually feel like they can resonate with the information that's being talked about. And again, this is real world. We're not lecturing. We're not, we do bring up PowerPoints. That's because a lot of us are engineers in science and we can't do anything without a PowerPoint. But we share our experiences. And I think by having that diversity across our advisory board, that diversity in our education, it really helps resonate with the moms that are watching. And I'll let Liz kind of jump in from there, but those are the 2 ways that we're trying to establish that. And all of our educational programs are free so that it's accessible to all, and they're on Zoom. So you don't need to worry about transportation and things like that either.
So something that I knew over time is that families are not going any longer to childbirth education. The number of families that attend childbirth education preparation, breastfeeding classes has declined steadily over the last 25 years. And so when we decided to do this panel virtually, and we had such an outpouring of people come to it and attend it, we really began thinking about, well, why is the model of childbirth education the way it is? It's sort of a top-down, here's what you need to know about the hospital. And what we're learning is that when you learn from your community, that your education model evolves. And what we ask at the end of every panel is like, what do you want to see next? And that informs our next panel. And we had one group that said, we want to hear from the moms. We don't even want to hear from the experts. So we had one whole panel of just women sharing their lived experience of giving birth during a pandemic and what helped, what didn't, how they overcame obstacles. So it's much more of it's much more of an evolutionary model of, okay, and I assume it will continue to be like that because populations change, needs change, and rather than us deciding what people need, it's really learning from our clients. What do you want? What do you need? What is the evidence that speaks to you? And what helps you in your stage of life right now?
Great. I think for all of us in the entrepreneur space, so that's one thing we mentor to others is to how do you continue to listen to your customer and get that feedback. Mm-hmm. So that's wonderful to hear how you are doing that every day. So I'd like to shift a little bit and go into kind of lessons learned for other folks who are looking to start a business. I mean, what advice would you give to other women entrepreneurs or other entrepreneurs in general?
Yeah, that's, I would say that, and we talk about this concept at Zymetica and other places. So minimum viable product is something that we throw out a lot, MVP, which is like really defining what it is, like listening to customers, understanding their needs, really peeling back the onion. So we do tons and tons of market research. So I think that's number one. You have to really understand who you're catering to and what their challenges are. But I think number two is don't wait till it's perfect. If you have an idea, get something out there, because you're going to learn so much from how people are using it, what their experiences are, to then iterate over and over again. So Momuni was the first version of this. Now we're on to Flourish Fund, and that we launched our alpha in May of 2021. We have 1,100 customers on the platform, starting registries, adding up to $1,200, adding on average $1,200 of products and services to their registries. And I've learned so much through that. Getting that out there and getting the experience. Is it perfect? No. We've been doing surveys. We've been getting feedback from people saying, I like this, I don't like this, I wish you did this. And we're just going to continue to iterate and make it better and better and better. And I don't think that process ever stops. So I don't want people to think that they need to wait till they make the perfect product to get it out there. I think the sooner you get it out there, the better. The other thing I feel like I've learned is we waited until, basically November is when we started fundraising, October, November timeframe. And I really wasn't out there talking to people about what we were doing before that. And so now it's been great. There's been amazing connections. I'm constantly, fundraising is a full-time job. And it's really incredible how many connections people are bringing our way. But I do wish that I'd started those relationships sooner. Like even with Momunity and the original platform that I had, just explaining to people what we were building, because now there's this big groundswell of maternal health, solutions out there. None of them exactly in our space, but there's a lot coming out because there's so many problems to solve. And I think there's so much opportunity. But I do wish people had heard about us kind of earlier. So that would be my other piece of advice. Long-winded answer, but lots of learnings.
And I would just say, I mean, Melissa's really the brains behind all of this, but what I've learned from her is her adaptability, her flexibility, and her positivity. And really, from my perspective, knowing that this is something really important, and we can be incredibly passionate about it because we really believe in it. So
yeah, maybe Liz, you can share a little bit about how you decided. So, I mean, you're working full time, and how you decided to make the leap and add this on in a way. And you too, Melissa, but we'll start with Liz
I think we were just naturally talking to each other constantly about sort of women's health issues, and it just was a natural partnership. And so when she asked me if I was like, oh, yeah, doing what I already love to do is talk to people about solving women's health problems and thinking about solutions. And so that it just seemed like a natural add-on to where I am in my point in my life and my career. And I sort of, in my own time, really think about things that make women confident, that help families transition. So to me, it's what I would be doing on my own anyway. So much better to do it with Melissa.
Excellent. So it didn't feel like necessarily this leap.
No, not at all. Just it felt like a very natural transition to me.
What about you, Melissa? How did you, having working also at Zymetica, how did you decide to take that leap?
Yeah, it's a hard leap to take, I would say. So I started again working on the business even when I was back at Becton Dickinson. Product manager, and having 2 kids at home, you having 3, it's just a lot to balance. And I was going through the accelerator with this as a passion project. But then hearing the overwhelming, I had a mom approach me and be like, you saved my life. You literally through Momunity saved my life, because had I not had support at my house, recognizing the signs of depression, I wouldn't have gotten myself to the day program and all that stuff. So like, it's those types of things that you're like, we gotta make this happen. And so I really worked on it as a passion project for, 2 to 3 years as we kind of went out and understood, how we can iterate and make the product better and better. And the companies that I was working for have been so supportive of that. So I have to really be grateful to both BD and Enzymedica for allowing me to pursue that passion. And then about the middle of last year, as we were gearing up for fundraising, I was like, this has to be full-time. You can't balance the two. And I really do believe that this is a solution that could be the next Maven Clinic, which is the first, billion-dollar maternal health company out there. So we're going for it. And I would say, again, I wouldn't let that hold you back. I don't think you need to jump in and take all that risk right off the bat. Just kind of learn and iterate and kind of make that decision when it feels right, which for me was, summer of last year to jump in full time.
Excellent. Yeah, you've mentioned them a few times for sharing for others. The SEG is the social economic greenhouse, correct? Here in Rhode Island.
Social enterprise greenhouse.
Enterprise.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Excellent. And that's great. You've been able to use so many of the entrepreneur resources in Rhode Island that you have available. You also mentioned, not in this conversation, but when we were speaking earlier, you participate in the Rye Hub Venture Mentoring services as well. So I'll give a shout out to both of those. Excellent. And I have to imagine you've had such rich experiences. Which ones do you feel play in well into from the entrepreneurial space? So kind of shifting from product development into entrepreneur, same with midwifery, being in a hospital setting. Which skills do you see have translated well into running a business?
It's interesting because I think we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, the patient-centered, like problem-solving approach. I feel like my entire career, I've just taken the engineering problem-solving way that I learned, and applied it to different problems. So like in engineering and innovating, I have a couple of patents from early on in my career. It was around how do I solve these design problems and really understand the challenges that the surgeons are having and things like that. Then later on in my career, as I transitioned into marketing, which I don't have an MBA, I don't have any traditional business degrees. It was, again, just like peeling back the onion and understanding, what are the opportunities for growth at BD, for example? Where can we go next? And understanding the problem spaces for the surgeons, but then also recognizing that another customer of mine, at least there, was my sales organization, my 200 sales reps, and they had challenges that they were facing. So again, applying, engineering problem solving to that and saying, okay, where are the trends? What are the things, go out in the field with the reps, understand what their biggest challenges are. And now taking that into entrepreneurship, there's so many problems to solve. There's like, how are we building out our corporation? How are we meeting the demands of our families? How are we building these partnerships? How are we supporting the providers that are within our network? So it's, to me, always been the same kind of problem solving approach and applying it in different ways. So that's my answer to how it applies. But Liz, you've got a very different perspective with your clinical background.
Yeah, I think that for me, I've always enjoyed hearing multiple perspectives on many different problems. And I think that ability to listen and incorporate those perspectives, like an example here is we had a big problem with induction of labor and sort of, like it's kind of lonely. You're in your room for a long time, but I really asked a lot of people and patients, and we created a labor walking path here, and it's just a way to get out of your room and connect with people. So I think it's that ability to sort of connect with multiple perspectives on a particular problem, because definitely all of us, it's better than, one of us. I think that that really takes us a lot further and ultimately benefits the patient in the end.
That's great. That's so excellent. What about you, Liz? We heard about some advice that Melissa would give. What advice would you have for others contemplating starting on an entrepreneurial journey?
So for me, I think you have to be passionate about what you want to be entrepreneurial about. You have to have a solid foundation and understanding why it's going to work. And for me, I think just knowing what I know about families and where the problem is that women in general get a fair amount of support up until the birth of the child, and then it's that time period afterwards of even myself and my own parenting experience, like, wait a second now, what's going on? And knowing that there's this real gap in maternal child health that we can fill. So I would just say to anybody that's taking something like this on to just completely believe in the science of it and why it's going to work. And I think from there, you can sell it and make it work. And like I said, I've just really learned a lot from Melissa's very contagious positivity and adaptability.
That's great. Well, I mean, having talked to you, I could tell that really your commitment to the families and the moms is really evident, and using data and science to support that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. All right. Before we kind of move on to our question and answer, anything else you would love to share about highlights and about the Flourish Fund and Collective, and perhaps what's one ask you have of everyone here in the audience today?
So as I mentioned, we launched our alpha in May of 2021. So we've got some work to do. So we are definitely looking for investment there. We have an incredible tool as well. We call it the Wellness Tracker that essentially scores moms in 3 areas. It's their self-care, their support system, who they currently have within their team to support them through pregnancy and postpartum, and then baby readiness. What classes have they taken? Are they a first-time mom? Are they second-time mom? And we really curate the entire experience around that. So our goal really is to build that into the user experience. So every day they're getting tips curated to them and their families. So again, like we're building something really special here, and we need funding in order to do that. So I would like to ask anybody who has connections to investors that are interested in this space, please send them my way. But we're really excited about what's to come, and I can't share all of it now, but there's a lot of exciting things to come. Go ahead, Liz.
Liz, what's your one ask?
So my one ask is that this has been a tough 2 years for everybody, and to just reach out to new families and ask what you can do for them and see what they need. Maybe it's going to CVS, maybe it's looking at the Flourish Fund and seeing what kind of bundles are going to be most supportive, but to really be aware of your community and the new families that really need a whole village around them.
I was excited. I had the opportunity to gift my first Flourish Fund gift card the other day to a fellow new mom. So I was excited to be able to do that.
Thank you so much for your support, Michelle. And she's wonderful. I got to chat with her as well. So she's very excited about her bundle.
That's excellent. All right. I'll turn it over with Carol to help out and to open it up for folks that have questions or would want to hear more, and you can either put in the chat or is it okay if folks bring themselves off mute as well, Carol, to ask questions?
Sure. So Melissa and Michelle, you mentioned a gift card. You might want to let everybody know how they can access that. Do they just go on your website and find it there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way the Flourish Fund is set up is it's a registry and a gift platform. So you can go on, and like Michelle did, she bought a $100 gift card, and you can actually gift that to a fellow mama, and then she can go on and use it on the website, or she can use it within the support system, however she wants. The way we typically structure our bundles is around like an outcome. So we have like a successful breastfeeding bundle, for example, that comes with a breast pump. It comes with organic nipple butter, and it comes with a lactation tea that helps with your milk supply. And then you also get a gift card in there for, $50 to use towards lactation support. So when you need it, you can pick up the phone, just book directly through the Flourish Fund platform, and you can book your lactation lactation consultant. We vetted all of the providers. We have 155 maternal wellness experts, individual experts on our platform today, ranging from Maine down to Connecticut. So ultimately, mom she has it at her fingertips. She can use that gift card however she wants. If she got it in a lactation bundle and she's formula feeding, she can go use that for sleep support instead. So it's completely flexible that she can use those funds however she needs it for her support.
So are all those vendors on your website?
They are, yep. If you go to
So
experience and support, you can see all the vendors, and it's set up as a traditional like Airbnb marketplace where you can book them directly through the platform.
That sounds like a great way for people to support moms. I think it's a wonderful idea. So I want to recognize Peggy Farrell, who I just see she was going to say something anyway, but Peggy chairs the Rhode Island Business Competition, which Melissa and the Flourish Fund and Liz were winners of. So Peggy, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Actually, I was actually going to ask a question, but I'll be happy to talk about that. Yeah, it was, hi, Melissa. And full disclosure, and I made this disclosure to the judging panel as well. I have a 35, 40-year history with Women and Infants Hospital. I was chair of the board when we built the South Pavilion. So yeah, so I am very familiar with women and infants, and I was interested in hearing the response in terms of access and diversity, because I know that's a major initiative at the hospital. I was the business plan competition. It's a business competition, and Melissa was a wonderful applicant, and it was very exciting. And you know, we have a diverse judging board, and so I think it resonated, but it also resonated with the men who had experience with some of these issues indirectly through their spouses. You know, I think men often feel very left out on a postpartum basis because you know, particularly if the mother is breastfeeding, you know, they're not participating in that, but they are participating in her mood swings, her fatigue, and all of that. So, you know, I think anybody who's gone through that or has it's relatively recent, at least in this, you know, with the Gen X generation and younger, where things were just turned over to moms to deal with, but dads tend to be more engaged, kind of gets it. And I imagine there's a bit of a generational issue in terms of making the point. What I wanted to ask Melissa was, you sort of talked about the serendipitous things and the successes. Maybe you can comment about the things that were more challenging or didn't go the way you wanted, and how you handled those, because I'm a firm believer that we learn more from the things that don't go well than the things that do go well.
I think that's an excellent point. It's really nice to see you again. The one thing I want to say on the father and partner support side is partner depression, postpartum depression is real as well. And it is significant. It's more significant now in the pandemic. So we do a lot. Partner support is actually one of our Zoom events that we do specifically, and we had a 20% rate of partners joining that, learning about how to take care of themselves, but also while taking care of their significant other. So I think it's a really good point that you brought up. As far as challenges, there's lots of them. I would say probably starting at the beginning was when I originally was looking at Mom Unity, I was hoping the government was going to be stepping in with reimbursement, and I was going to the State House to fight for it, and it was denied year over year, which was really challenging. And part of our pivot was, okay, if these you know, other societal ways of supporting mom they're not going to step in, how can we do it on our own, and kind of shift the $15 billion that's spent on strollers and fancy cribs and things like that, and move that to things that are going to really drive better outcomes. Now we're getting this beautiful kind of merging, but this is 4 years in the making, right? So, and it's amazing. Honestly, the doula community is really what drove this. It's not me who drove it, but I was watching from the sideline and trying to support as much as I could, really hoping that this was going to happen. So I think that was a big learning for me. I think customer acquisition is always much harder than you expect. We, won the business competition. We had a plan in place where we're just going to switch on the go button and everyone's going to sign up for a registry. That's not really how it goes. So we had a lot of testing, A/B testing of our messaging and figuring out, are we targeting the families? Are we targeting the moms? And we landed on this really incredible wellness score, and helping moms understand where they're at in their own wellness journeys, and then supporting them from there, which really worked well. But I think that's another kind of, you assume you build it and they will come, and that's certainly not the case. There's a lot of learning that happens there. I'm trying to think what else. Kathy, I just saw you. I'm actually on my phone because they cut our internet today, so I can't see everybody who's in the gallery, but I just saw Kathy there as well, one of our mentors through our RiHub. So yeah, I'm trying to think fundraising, another significant challenge. I, again, had this assumption. I built out my plan thinking, okay, funding's going to come in 3 months. And here we are with several investors in the diligence phase, but we need funding, and that takes longer than expected. And you spend so much time on phone calls. And I find that it's easier with the pandemic because you can reach people through Zoom, but the process takes longer. I went to one conference, a women's health conference in Boston, and I sat down with 10 investors, and it was amazing. And we were moving through diligence and stuff much faster with the in-person relationships, and people see how passionate you are in person. It's harder to convey that over Zoom. So those are just a couple that immediately come to mind, but I should probably write them down because there's a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and I would make this observation. You can build the best mousetrap in the world, but if people don't know about it, they aren't going to buy it, or what, equivalent, go to your site. So my experience is that everybody underestimates their marketing cost. And when I say marketing, basically awareness, customer awareness. That I think you have a phenomenal idea. And I think that given the dollars that are spent on things and stuff, that most women who've gone, who've had children, mothers, grandmothers, etc., would light up with the idea that you can include support system, particularly in a world where we have so many families who are not, they don't have the extended family support anymore because we're so mobile. And so, they may have a child or a niece or whatever who is across the country and pretty much alone, on her own, right? And would love to have the capacity to provide soft support rather than a baby carriage. So, but I think it is awareness. It's just making people know. I think the product ultimately can sell itself once people know it's there, but that is a hefty marketing budget, just customer awareness. And every budget I've ever seen, they always underestimate that aspect.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And it's shifting a behavior too, right? This is a different model. So bringing awareness and shifting behavior is no, easy task.
Yeah, although I love your gift card idea, because I think when people gift, they want something, excuse me, tangible. They like that.
Yeah.
It's something. So having, better, it's almost better than saying, excuse me, we got you this service. the ability to say, we got you the ability to get the service you want and need. And it's basically, you know, and the permission to spend dollars on yourself. Right?
That's
Spend dollars on yourself, because I always think that's the challenge. When you're a new parent, often you feel that it's all about the baby.
100%.
All right, well, do we have any last questions before we wrap up for this morning? No, okay, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to our speakers, Melissa and Liz and Michelle, for your excellent job moderating this morning's session. Really terrific information and so much progress so quickly. So I'm sure that there'll be more for you to come back and share with us over time. We've put your website in the chat, and also our Rhode Island Bio website for more events in the future. So I invite you to take a look at both of those websites. And if you're not a Rhode Island Bio member, we would love for you to join us so you can take advantage of discounts on various services, training, events like these that we have, and you can find that on our website as well. So thank you, everybody, and stay safe in this weekend's storm, and hope to see you all again very soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Bye.
So nice.
Presentation.
Maggie, nice to see you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.